Hi there, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for taking some time to chat with me.
Sure, no problem. That's
Sorry
good.
for getting all my fills mixed up earlier.
Oh, that's all right. It's a common problem here, as you might imagine.
Well, as you know, instead of doing in-person visits this year as we would normally do, we're doing these virtual visits instead. So I won't keep you too long, but I just wanted to chat with you a little bit about the background of the winery and how you work in the vineyards and in the winery as well.
hmm
So
Sure.
I would love if you would start off by telling us a bit about the winery and about some of the people who work there.
Sure. So Damiani was started in 2004. Um, two friends who grew up together, Lou Damiani and Phil Davis. They both had their own vineyards. Actually, Phil Davis, his family has been growing grapes, at least since his grandfather in this area, back when it was mostly natives and hybrids.
Mhm.
And so he grew up on a tractor, and he actually helped Lou Damiani plant his vineyards. And at one point, they decided, we'll just start making some wine on our own in our garage. They were both into primarily their passions were champagne and red wine.
Okay.
And they basically wanted to prove that you could make good vinifera red wine in this area because everyone was, they were all about sweet wine, and then it became all about Riesling. There was a time when sparkling wine was much bigger than it is in our area, but they kind of started the winery almost out of a sense of don't tell us what we can't do. We're gonna prove that we can make good red wine here. So they started making a couple barrels here and there, and then they realized they had all this wine. They should probably go ahead and get a winery license. Otherwise, they were going to get in trouble. Um, so they opened their doors. I came on board in 2009
Okay.
as Lou's assistant winemaker. Lou has always worked full time at Cornell. Actually, just retired this year from Cornell. So I came in to help in the cellar. When I started, the winery was about 2,000 cases a year,
Mhm.
running out of a barn behind Phil Davis's house. So that was the tasting room and wine production facility. And actually, just recently, this year, we built a brand new facility.
Oh,
At,
really?
yeah, which is much. It's set up to be a winery, so as the barn was not. So yeah, we've grown from about 2,000 cases to, it changes year to year, but we're between like 6,000 and 8,000 cases a year.
Awesome.
Yeah, we make. I think when you add it all up, the number of bottlings changes year to year too. But we make between 15 and 20 wines a year. Even though we are a little more focused on red wine, we do still make about 10 different bottlings of whites,
Mhm.
2 to 3 different bottlings of champagne or sparkling wine. We're not French, so we can't say champagne, but it's a traditional method for the most part. Um, and yeah, and then we have a whole line of reds. We love to celebrate single vineyards when we can. And Pinot Noir has always been a passion project for us. The heartbreak grape, so it's it's hard. It's the hardest one to make out of everything, but you make Pinot just like for sparkling wine, or just like with sparkling wine, you make it because you have a passion for it, not because you're trying to get rich making Pinot and champagne.
For sure.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, it's great to hear. I have visited once, I'll say, and we had a great time tasting some wines there, but it's fun to dive a little bit deeper into it, beyond what you might go to as a bachelorette party, which is what I was on.
Nice.
Yeah. So will you tell me a bit about the vineyards you work with, their location, and how you like to work in the vineyard? Or
Sure.
not you, but the team?
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not vineyard guy. That's that's where you can get a lot more useful information from other Phil Davis.
Yeah.
Um, I know more than the average person, I suppose. But so we have. It's interesting. One of our strengths and one of our challenges at Damiani is the fact that we have so many different vineyards in different places,
Mhm.
controlled by different people. So Phil Davis has his vineyards, primarily on Peach Orchard Road, but he's got a couple up the road in Kaywood that he rents. I'm sorry, not rents, leases, like long-term lease.
Mhm.
Then Lou Damiani has his own vineyard at his house. Phil Davis's vineyard is where typically our best Pinot Noir
Mhm.
comes from. It's where our Sauvignon Blanc is planted. All of our Riesling.
Mhm.
And Lou's vineyard is where the bulk of our premium Bordeaux wines come from. So
Mhm.
his vineyard is almost entirely Cab Franc and Merlot.
Okay.
We've just recently had some Pinot Noir over at his place come on, which is very exciting. His site is just ludicrously good for red wine. He's got a hell of a site. And then the winery owns, so they each own their vineyards independently of the winery. Then the winery has planted over the last 6-8 years, has planted quite a bit actually. We planted a 12-acre block just north of us in the little town of Valois.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a checkerboard. It's like 7 different varietals there. It was basically we looked on paper and said, well, these are all the things that we buy from other farms, so let's plant all of those.
Okay.
So now we've got a little bit of everything over there. Cab Franc, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Meunier for our Champagne, Lemberger, etc. So, and the wineries continued to plant more. We planted 6 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon 3 years ago. We ripped out the last of our hybrid vineyard, which was something that Phil Davis's dad had planted, and probably was the oldest planting of Rougeon in the state. Not that that's too impressive, but it was interesting, and it's sad to see it go.
Yeah.
But 6 acres of Rougeon that we don't use, we were just selling that to be made into Red Cat, actually, at Hazlitt's. So we'd rather use our own land and time and effort to make the grapes we need, which is the Bordeaux Reds primarily, because you don't have a problem finding Riesling or Chardonnay for sale in our area.
Mhm.
Everyone's got Riesling and Chardonnay in the ground. Bordeaux Reds are harder. So we realized if we're going to grow our red program, we need to grow it ourselves. It's the only way we can have a secure supply of quality fruit. So you know, our production has outstripped our vineyards, and now our vineyards are catching up.
You mentioned that, Pinot Noir is a love of yours, but it's also a heartbreaker. You've mentioned Cab Franc, you mentioned Merlot. Which red grapes do you think are most successful in your vineyards?
Cabernet Franc is a proven winner year in, year out. It's more disease resistant, thicker skin than Pinot, obviously. And it can achieve a good level of ripeness every year. And
Mhm.
you can't say that about Cab Sav or Merlot. And Pinot, you turn around for 10 seconds, it'll start rotting. Like, even if you do everything right all year, you get a stretch of rain at the wrong time during harvest, you watch your Pinot Noir melt.
Mhm.
It's never a sure thing until you've picked the fruit with Pinot. I've been extremely enamored of Lemberger or Blaufränkisch.
Mhm.
Kind of wish we could go back in time and call ours Blaufränkisch. Lemberger's a little more harsh sounding, but there's
I don't know. Blaufränkisch is pretty harsh sounding.
I know it's all Germanic and
Yeah.
guttural, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
The TTB told they wouldn't approve a label for Blaufränkisch when we first applied for it. They said if we wanted to call it a varietal, we had to call it Lemberger.
Huh.
That obviously that's changed, but at the time, a lot of times with the TTB, it depends which reviewer reviews your application,
Right.
and then they just 5 other people would have given you a different answer. But whatever, it's Lemberger now. But Lemberger's like Cab Franc. It's more disease resistant, and it does well even if we have a cool, wet growing season.
Mm-hmm.
If you can keep it clean, Lemberger does beautifully in those seasons where you would typically not think of them as a red year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How would you define your winemaking style and the qualities that you tend to want your wines to have?
Well, we have a house style, which tends to be more tannic,
Mm-hmm.
a little more aggressive. I tend to focus. What I look for in my red wines is body. I don't want thin, acidic red wine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what I like to drink, so it's not what I want to make. So the more I can do to extract whatever I can from the grapes, without hopefully going too far.
Yeah.
I like to be as non-interventionist as possible, and let the vineyards speak for themselves. Good wine. Our philosophy has always been good wine is made in the vineyards, and winemakers screw it up. So get out of the way. Do your best to midwife the grapes into being wine without trying to science your way through it, I guess. There's techniques. What I've learned over the years is there's techniques to do these things that we want, to like lower your acidity, to increase your body and mouthfeel. There's ways to do this just through processing, through technique, as opposed to, wine additives from a bag. So I've over my time here, I've gone from when I first started, we were sterile filtering our red wines. Mm. Now I don't filter the red wines for the most part, unless there's a real need to. Because you filter it, it loses some body. It'll brighten up the fruit a little bit, but you also lose something. So, that's kind of my approach, is to do the best I can to bring the best out of the grapes that I have to work with for that year.
Excellent. Are there any techniques that you can use in the vineyard to supplement bringing out that body, bringing out that structure as well?
Oh, yeah. So we do a lot of extra work in the vineyard. I don't know, well, what do you define as extra? But we don't do any weed spray. It's all mechanical weed cultivation with a side plow hoe. Mm-hmm. Phil thinks it's important to have a living soil. And when you're constantly spraying herbicide on the soil, well, that's not very conducive. Right. You're encouraging monocropping, and that's never great for a living sustainable soil. Mm-hmm. We do a good amount of shoot thinning and fruit thinning, so we keep our yields pretty low, which in our opinion is just necessary if you want your red wine to have concentration and achieve the level of ripeness we want. Right. At the end of the day, the growing season is going to kind of be the ultimate determination, but there's lots of things we can do to manipulate it in the right direction. We do pretty much 100% leaf removal in the fruiting zone. So space about, 1.5 feet wide, basically stripping all the leaves off to create more airflow, to get some sun actually on the fruit. That really helps develop the skin tannins. Mm-hmm. And it helps them harden off too, so they're more disease resistant. That's generally been our techniques.
Excellent. I don't have any more specific questions for you. Is there anything about Damiani that we should know that we haven't already talked about?
Oh boy.
That could be a loaded question.
It is. I'm trying to think how to approach that one. I don't know.
I just want to make sure we haven't missed anything. Well, I also have to ask, of course, how have you guys been dealing with everything that's gone on this year, considering the very different, social and work climate that we live in now? Yeah. How have you as a business been dealing with all this?
So there's not that many people that work here at the production facility. It's me and the assistant winemaker, Lauren, who's actually doing all the real work right now. We're bottling up for the next week, and
Oh, excellent.
got to get all our reds ready to go. It's really, there's only a couple of us here, so things haven't changed too much. You know,
Mhm.
we try and we maintain social distance and wear masks when we can't. But like, it didn't. We never got shut down like most other industries did, because we're food production. It's in all honesty, it's kind of silly that wine got this pass because it's a bit of a luxury
It's
item.
a necessary item, right?
I mean, they never shut down liquor stores either, so I guess
Yeah.
it is necessary. But yeah, from the production side of things, things didn't change too much for us. The tasting room obviously has completely revamped its format.
Yeah.
Um, we see less people, but they're more engaged because they have to make reservations.
Right.
You know, yeah, we're just not doing walk-ins anymore because it's too much. And they've been busy over there, and we've got a whole outdoor seating thing going on now. And one thing about our particular business model is we have an enormous wine club. You know, we're not a very big winery, 6,000 to 8,000 cases. I mean, that's a medium-sized small winery, I would say.
Mhm.
If you get to be 10,000 cases or more, you might be a small, medium-sized winery. But we have 1,100 people in our wine club that get quarterly shipments. So, I mean, I don't know what percentage it is, but it's probably a third of our income is just from our wine club. So that really helped us lessen the financial blow. And we actually saw, you know, in the early days of the pandemic, we saw like huge increase in online sales. You know, that's basically our tasting room staff turned into the shipping department, just fulfilling shipping orders all day. So yeah, I mean, the models had to pivot, but we're actually, knock on wood, have adapted with relatively little pain. Now that the tasting rooms are open again, it's, you know, it's kind of an air of apprehension, kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop, because we're seeing a lot of out-of-state people, and that's a bit scary when New York is one of the only places without huge rises in cases. And I don't know, my information's a week out of date now, so
Yeah. It can be a day out of date and everything changes.
it's crazy. But no, but we're seeing license plates from Florida, Texas, Pennsylvania,
Wow.
Ohio. People come from all over, and I wonder how many of them are doing their 14-day mandatory quarantine. That's a little joke. But yeah, overall things are going well, and we're cautiously optimistic. We're actually not increasing production this harvest, but we're not shrinking. We had initially, in the early days, thought we were going to have to reduce production 25% across the board, and we're not doing that anymore. We're buying new tanks for red fermenting. We're buying some new equipment, and we upped our grape order. So
Excellent.
we're a bit bullish on the prospects.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I can't wait until I can visit once again. I'm not in a mandatory quarantine state. I'm in Connecticut, so
Right. You're allowed to come here, right? Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, you know, once I can make it up there, it'll be great to explore all the wineries again. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. It's the second best thing to actually making it there,
Yeah.
in addition to tasting the wines.
Yeah, no, it was really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, best of luck with bottling.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye.